look, what was our chart? Remember the chart? Salvation, what's the next one? Submission, right? So this is the whole theme of this section of 1 Peter. This is not something just directed at women because they're inferior. This is the subject of the whole section of this book. So he first of all says every Christian should be submissive to the government. Obey every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake. Then he says servants should be submissive to their masters in all things, even to those who are abusive. Then he says wives should be in submission to their husbands. Then he says husbands should treat their wives with respect and therefore submit to their interests when they need to. So all this whole section is about submission. Now that should frame it differently for you as to the understanding we're to have, because he's addressing all of us and addressing the various levels of responsibility that each of us have. And we have different ones. As a citizen, I have a different responsibility than a person who's not a citizen, although all people have a responsibility to submit to the government that they live under. As a husband, I have a different responsibility than my wife does, and a wife has a different responsibility and obligation than the husband does. And other scriptures, like Ephesians chapter 5, which is a parallel, we'll come to that later. He even brings in children being submissive and obey their parents. So even children are part of this whole thing in the scriptures. So remember when I asked to start this discussion a few weeks ago, how many of you are not under authority to anyone? Well, how many? What's the answer? No one is everyone is under authority. In fact, if you say, well, I'm not authority to anybody, you mean to tell me as a Christian, you're not under authority to the government you live under? What's this say? As a Christian, are you under anybody's authority? You're under the authority of the government you live under, if you're a Christian, and you must submit to them. Yes, sir.
When you talk about the government, if the government does something against the Bible, then we don't have to be submissive.
Yes, we must obey God rather than men. But he doesn't even bring that up here. And I think, personally, Bob, I agree. I think those situations are pretty limited for the most part. Because most governments have the very same thing in mind that God does, protecting the innocent and punishing the wicked. Now, every now and then they get out of line with that and they start attacking Christians as such, and we're at that on the verge of that right now, or there. And so there's going to be a time when we need to obey God rather than men. But generally he's telling me to submit to the rules of man for the sake of the Lord. Yes, sir.
I think I may be mistaken, but there was a city or town in Texas that told the churches what they could preach on and what they could not preach.
Well, that was attempted very clearly by the mayor of Houston a few years ago. All of the preachers in that town had to submit their sermons ahead of time to this Democratic mayor of Houston, and she was going to review them to see if they contained hate speech. Okay. I would let her review it, and then I'd preach it anyway. Which is exactly what I would think I would do. And so, now this became a real question a couple of years ago. And it was going to be true here in St. Lucie County until Governor DeSantis put a stop to it. And that is, we were not going to be allowed to meet in this building, according to the government orders, or meet as a church. We weren't even going to be allowed to meet in the parking lot like some churches were. Well, should we obey that order or not? Now, that's a good question. Should we obey the order or not? Some Christians said yes, some said no. But regardless of what we decide there, we do have to submit to the government. And we need to be cautious about deciding I'm not going to submit to the government. We ought to be cautious about that and thoughtful about that, and not just decide that what I want to do is more important. That's what he's saying here. And servants, do you have to do everything your boss says? Yes, except what Bob is saying. He might tell you to do something immoral, and then you need to resist that. But most of the time, 95% of the time or more, and until recently it was 100% of the time, no boss was requiring you to do anything immoral. In my time growing up in America, I can't think of very many cases where employers were requiring or demanding that their employees do something immoral. Now, but when political correctness came in here a few years ago, yes, they began to do that. You can't say this, you got to say this, you got to do, other things like that. You got to fund this, that's just recent. And so, yes, there's now times when we probably should resist our employer. But once again, I caution you that that should be pretty well thought out. Then you might have to resist. And then I say, if you're going to resist, be ready to pay the consequences for that. Don't go to a protest, throw bricks at the police, and then cry that you're being persecuted because you get thrown in jail. If you want to throw bricks at the police, you think you're scripturally justified in that, then take the consequences for that. Be a man about it. Martin Luther King was a man about that stuff. He went to jail when he did what was at that time illegal. Okay. Be a man about it. Don't whine that you're being persecuted or that somehow it's unjust. He says when you resist the government, you can expect to be punished. And if we're going to resist, we should expect to be punished. If you resist your boss, you can expect to be punished. If you resist the government, you can expect to be punished. So be careful what you do. Now, on the other hand, I think Bob is getting at a good point. Oftentimes, the gospel requires us to have courage and resist, or at least not do what is wrong. God would require that of us. So when the government says you got to deny Christ, well, then we're not going to deny Christ. So this is the context that we're in here. So it's not just about women being, put down or something like that. It's got a whole different context to it. So let's go back here then. And what I was getting at is the likewise part. The likewise refers to the whole context he's in. That's why the arrow is pointing back to this first passage about obeying the government, obeying as a servant. Wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husbands. Here, the submission is directed to a specific person, the husband. In other passages, the submission is not directed to a specific person, which we'll see. Why should you do this? Well, that's what the word that means. That is the reason. That, even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word. The reason you ought to submit as a wife that Peter gives, among others, is that if you have a husband who is not a Christian, you can win him over this way. You can win him to Christ by your submission to him. I know that seems incomprehensible to a few people, but this is what the scriptures say. And it's worth really thinking about if you find yourself in this position. And I think that this principle might apply all the way down the line. So let's say that you're a young person, or you're a child, you want to win your parents to the gospel, and you're a teenager, or you're a young adult and your parents are not Christian. You want to win them to the gospel, then I think this approach here is the right approach. So there are some men, husbands, these Christians were scattered among the world. He says you're strangers, you're pilgrims, remember all that part in the book of Peter? You find yourselves among foreigners in a foreign land, as it were. They're not Christians. Then you need to understand that as a foreigner, you have to act differently as a Christian, and that you may find yourself among unbelievers. So they can be won by the conduct of their wife without saying a word. I advise wives whose husbands are not Christians to be very cautious about what they say about the gospel. If you approach that you're going to be after your husband all the time about being baptized, becoming a Christian, you're approaching it the wrong way. That's not how you approach this. Why? Because you're in submission. That's why. He might tell a husband something different. He tells the husband to lead his family, so maybe the husband needs to lead with words. But he doesn't tell the wife that. He tells the wife, you do this, you can do this without a word. He doesn't say don't ever say a word. But the words must be spoken under the attitude of submission. And we'll get back to this. What kind of actions that What kind of conduct? I should have put the line from conduct to observe. Or conduct. You see, he mentions conduct twice here. That they may be won by the conduct of the wives when they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear. So the conduct that they should observe from you is chaste conduct. We've discussed this before, but it's worth repeating to me, repeating. I like to repeat things repeatedly. I like to repetitiously repeat things repeatedly. Chaste. The word chaste here is the word for holy. Probably says that in a few versions, translates, I don't know, virtuous or holy. And what it means, what the word holy or chaste means is set apart. Something that is holy or chaste doesn't even mean religious particularly. It means set apart for a particular use. So I use the illustration. We have ordinary silverware. We have stuff in our house that looks like silver, only it's just plastic, painted silver. Okay? And then we have actual silver in a drawer that's actual silver that someone gave us. And then we have my wife's stuff she got at our wedding and all that stuff that's set aside. And so this real silver is set aside for particular usages. You don't just use that real silver and get done with it and throw it in the trash. Well, it happens. You shouldn't do that. Why? Because it's holy. It's set apart for a special use. The plastic stuff you can use for any old thing, and you can throw it away. It's not holy. It's not chaste. That's the word, chaste or holy. Chastity. What do we mean by chaste behavior if a woman has chastity? What do we mean by that in common usage? It means that she's not sexually free. She's not one of these 304s they call them today. She don't have a high body count. She's chaste. She's reserved for her husband. Or if she's not married, she's reserving herself for her husband. She is chaste. She has separated herself out of the world over here to something else. That's chaste. He says you wives should have chaste conduct towards your unbelieving husbands. This means that in everything you say and do, your husband, and this is something women don't understand about men. Men don't understand a lot of things about women, but there are a lot of things, because it's never talked about in our culture, a lot of things women don't understand about men at all. Men don't care how much money you make as a wife. They don't care about your degree. They don't care about your advancement. They don't care about any of that stuff that you care about. You think men care about that because you care about it. Men don't care. They'll date a waitress at McDonald's. How many up-and-coming young women are going to date the guy that works at McDonald's? They're not going to do that because they don't value that. But men don't care about that. They'll date the girl at McDonald's. They're looking for something else out of a woman. And what they're looking for, main thing is chastity. Someone who is devoted to them and only them. That's what they're looking for. This means that the behavior of the wife should be that all of your thoughts and actions are devoted to your husband, to pleasing him and to getting along with him and being his wife. You don't have eyes for somebody else who makes more money or a friend because he's more handsome. You don't have eyes for your career or for other things, and sometimes even your children. You must be devoted to your husband. I told my wife, your first job is me. My first job is going to be you, but your first job is me. We have children. Your first job is, guess what? Still me. We'll get more children if we need them. I told the kids that. I can make more of you. It was fun. Not a problem. You mess around, we'll just make more of you. And I meant that in a sort of humorous way. I meant that. My wife is first to me. And because she's first and I'm first to her, our children have a stable, secure home to grow up in. Our grandchildren have something to look at. And our great-grandchildren, they have something to look at. Because what happens to most wives, though, when they get a child, all of her attention goes to the child. The husband is left behind. And then there's problems because of that. Why? Because men don't like that. It's against their nature. And especially with regard to how you dress and how you act toward other men and how you talk, all those things have to be chaste. One of the worst things my wife could do to me, and I almost guarantee you this is true for every man in this audience, would be if I heard her saying bad things about me to somebody else. I don't care if she says bad things about me to me. But when she says something denigrating about me to somebody else, that's not chaste. Okay? And it will hurt. It will drive a wedge between you and your husband very quickly. If you got something to say, you say it to your husband. And he should listen to you. Or at least he should pay attention. Whether he does or not, that's another matter. But that's why he says they should observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear. The word fear here, phobos, just means respect. And that word in Greek had a wide range of meaning, from fear of trembling and then to respect. It had a wide range. Should you fear the king? Well, yes. Fundamentally, you should respect the king, and occasionally you should fear him if he doesn't bear the sword in vain. So there's a wide range of meaning here. And in this case, it means respect. Respect and chastity are very closely related. Do you see that? If I fear the Lord, am I going to do what the Lord says? Am I going to be devoted only to him? See, the Jews, they would serve Jehovah in his temple, but then they'd go out and offer a sacrifice to some other god. It wasn't good enough that they offered sacrifice to Jehovah. Jehovah said, I'm a jealous God. You sacrifice only to me and not the other gods. That was the mistake they made. They thought they could do both. And a lot of women think they can do both. They can be loyal to other things in life, and their husband comes along somewhere in the mix. That's not how it works in reality. So this is, and the truth is, I'm making this sound rather negative. This is the beauty of a godly marriage. This is the beauty of the whole thing. The whole thing is contained in this, that I am only devoted to my wife and her welfare, and she is only devoted to me, and we share things together that no one else can share. You would be well served, if you were a young married person, to develop a us versus them mentality. And I would say some young couples have to develop this right away because their in-laws are both against them, and they have to develop this us versus the world mentality. And when you develop the us mentality, it's us, me and you, and we're going to do what's right together. Now then you have something that can be built upon. And that's the problem with living together. People say, well, I don't think we need marriage. We're just going to live together. You know what living together signals? Living together signals, I like you, but somebody better might come along, so I'm holding out. That's exactly what it says. The other person is going to understand that you're both waiting to see if something better comes along. You can call it whatever you want, call it commitment, but I can tell you from being committed that that's not commitment. Okay? It's waiting for something better to come along. And guess what happens a lot of the time? Something better does come along, or something you think is better comes along. When a woman says, I got to go find myself, you've heard me say this before, you know where they usually find themselves? In somebody else's bed. That's where they find themselves. Why? Because it's not chaste. I'm sorry, I'm getting hung up on this. And so then he goes on. He moves to this subject about chastity, or this chaste behavior to win your husband with subjection. He says, wives, going back to the word wives, do not let your adornment be merely outward. He gives some examples: arranging the hair, wearing gold, putting on fine apparel. This is something that women are very concerned about. They say it's because of men, but I don't really think that. I think they do it for other women for the most part, or for themselves. These women have the really long lashes, huge nails, look like Velociraptor, hair all over, all done up. If they'll tell you that they do this so they can attract men. Well, I tell you what, it does. It attracts a certain kind of man who thinks you're easy. Yes, it does that. But does it attract the man you want? Often not. Why? Because if you ask men, do you like that? What are they going to say? Almost universal, what do they say? No. Don't like it. Do not like it. Women think that men like it, but men do not like it. I hate it when my wife puts her hair all up. Always have hated it. I don't think it's just me. You know why? Because she's shutting herself off from me. That's inaccessible. Don't touch me. Back up. That's what that means. A lot of things. So he's telling women here that outward adornment has a place, but it's not the central place in the relationship. And it oftentimes does not show submission. It shows a willingness to attract other people. Once again, you might be looking for a better option sometimes. Some people are, some aren't. But be careful to get its confusion it's the same confusion a man gets when God says that you're the provider, you take care of your family. And all a man does then is work and he neglects his family. You think he's missed the point? I think he's missed the point. A woman who thinks that her beauty is the thing that really matters the most has missed the point. It's a different kind of beauty that your husband, he's telling you here, even this unbelieving husband is going to be far more impressed with inner chastity than he is wearing gold or jewelry or makeup. He's not saying don't do it. Not wrong to wear makeup or wear gold or put on apparel. Not wrong. Where does it fit into the scheme of things? It's secondary. But rather, there's the part that tells you that it's secondary. Rather, let it be. Do not let this, but rather let it be the hidden person of the heart. Here's this real person in here in the heart that's on the inside. Can't see it on the outside per se. It's on the inside. If you want to work on adorning something, you want to work on putting makeup on something or dressing something up, dress up this hidden person in the heart. How do you do that? Well, you do it with the tool you use. With is a tool. You hammer a nail with a hammer. You adorn this inner person with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious inside of God. Gentle and quiet. The word that is often translated there, the gentle part, is meek. Quiet just means not loud and boisterous. Whew. Go on TikTok and Instagram and see if there's any loud and boisterous women on there. It's just filled with loud and boisterous women. And they're taught from the time they're young that this is what's attractive to men or attractive to somebody. Is it? No. I'll give you another secret, ladies, about men. You know what men want the most in a wife besides chastity? They want peace. They don't want to have to fight the world all day long when they're out there in the world and come home to somebody who's going to fight them all night. They want peace. They just want to come home, have somebody who they know accepts them and loves them. They don't have to fight for that. They can have peace. Am I wrong about this, men? How wrong am I? Why are you laughing, Tremaine? Am I right or not? I'm right. I'm an old man. I know this stuff. They want peace from a woman. What does feminism tell women to do to men? Don't give them any peace at all. Make sure you criticize them every chance you get and get those men straightened out. Well, there you go. Why can't people stay married? And if they are married, why can't they be happy? Because feminism tells women exactly the opposite of what's true. God tells you here that the real beauty is quietness, peace. Doesn't mean you can't ever say your husband's wrong. No, it doesn't mean that at all. But you can do it in a peaceful. And then it's gentle. This is the word that's meek, for meek, praus. In our English, we transliterate it P-R-A-U-S. You can look it up. Praus. I'm probably not saying it right. But it means, I'll give you the long definition. Not having to have its way. That's what meekness is. Meekness does not have to have its way. It is not self-assertive, does not have to assert itself to be happy. That's meekness in this usage of it.
Mike,
Yeah.
do you know if that word gentle used there is the same one Paul uses of Jesus?
I think it is. Let me see if I can look it up here. He says, do you know if that word gentle is the same one that's used for gentle? Well, I am meek and lowly in heart. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Well, some versions say gentle.
I think mine says gentle.
Oh, for crying out loud. I had to get a new phone, and everything has to be signed into again and redone, and passwords sent, and blah, 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 blah. I just hate passwords. And we only have these passwords because people are crooks. Why else do we need them? You can't even trust your own wives and children. You've got to have a password against them too. Apparently. Give me a second here. Oh, for crying out loud. Hang on. Now it's time me out of the Bible I usually use, which has my Greek words in it. Give me just a second. That's only the first bell, apparently, Joel. According to me, that's only the first bell. Give me 1 second here. I can't get it to click on it. Praus is a primary word, mild, by implication, meekness, mildness. Now let me look it up in Matthew 11. The other verse you're talking about, where Jesus says he is meek and lowly in heart, is Matthew 11. Yes, same word, Gary.
Same word?
Same word. It means does not have to force its own way. Gentleness. Is this what feminism has taught women since the 1970s? It is the opposite of what feminism has taught women since the 1970s. That's why I'm against it. I'm not against it because I don't like women. I love women. I don't like women that don't live by this, though. Neither does God. Because they're ugly. My grandmother had a saying, pretty is as pretty does. Did you ever hear that before? That's a pretty old saying. Even when me and my brothers would do something not so good, she would say, pretty is as pretty does, meaning what you're doing is ugly. She didn't mean I was ugly. She might have meant that, but I don't think she did. I think she meant what I was doing was ugly. And I think that's what happens here. It's unfortunate. It's a terrible thing. But he says, this is how wives should be if they want to win their husbands to the Lord. That's worth considering. Now, we never even got to some of the rest of this, because he goes on to say, then in this manner, meaning in the manner of being meek and gentle, with inward adornment, not outward adornment, in former times, meaning in the Old Testament, holy women who trusted in God also adorned. The word adorned runs through this passage. Adorned is from the word cosmos, which means to arrange in an orderly fashion or to decorate. Being submissive to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord or Sir. The word Lord there in the bottom just means Sir. He's saying here that Sarah respected Abraham. In her behavior, in her speech, she respected Abraham. Whose daughters you are, if you want to be a daughter of Sarah and these old women from the past, you should do these same things. You need to do good and do not be afraid with any terror. So women are to be courageous and bold in that sense, but they are also to be submissive. This is a pretty powerful passage. I know it's very unpopular. Maybe I've made it more unpopular to you, but next week we're going to consider then, I didn't have time to get to what these words actually mean and some other New Testament scriptures about these words to see the general. Anybody have a final comment? Okay. We'll try again next Lord's Day, the Lord willing. Thank you very much.